Hi, Luisa. Thank you so much for joining the Conscious Provider Network. We are so excited to have you. You do family constellations, so why don't you talk a little bit more about this modality? So take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I basically this is my practice is what I do. I'm also an artist. So it's a really within the healing arts, this work. And what it really is a form of energy work. So we work in and within an energy field. And that's really important to point that out before we even start, because that will explain, I think, a lot of what we're going to be talking about.
Mhm.
And so we're really looking at any patterns that we might see. So if a client comes in with a problem, they feel maybe very stuck or feel like there's a big block, or maybe a pattern, a recurring pattern where they feel they can't break out of. What we often see is that somewhere within the family system, there is a direct connection to that. And with this work, what we can do is really tap into that, look at that, and systemically work through healing movements, opening up a path for healing for the client.
Can you give a concrete example of a client that came to you with some problem and how you work with them?
Yeah, I'm gonna make one up that is has happened many times in different forms and shapes. But let's say a client comes in and it turns out, maybe even after a longer intake, that their older sibling died at age 1, and it's something they maybe not even talk about so much. It's unspoken of in the family. People are just, move on. We don't talk about this. This is something we have put in the past, etc. And the client keeps struggling, maybe is very ill or is dealing, has problems in relationships, has problems just in life, maybe with work. And they feel lost. They come in and sometimes I hear the phrase, I feel very lost. I don't feel like I'm here. I don't feel like I'm in my life. And what that often means for me is that in this work, what my facilitator soul, so to speak, immediately taps into is who is missing, who has not been given a place in this person's system. And so in this example, what I would look at very likely is that we would give this older sibling who has passed, we would give them a place in the system. That means we don't push them away anymore. We don't exclude them anymore in terms of this is too painful. We can't look there. We actually, in this work, what we do is we look there. And that is very, very often very, very painful. But that is where the healing is, to actually acknowledge, to look, to give a place to the people who were pushed out maybe in our system, to give them a place, to acknowledge them and to say, I see you. You're a part of this family. You actually belong. And what that does, it immediately releases the client from carrying any form of weight. And essentially what has happened very often is that they stepped into the shoes of that older sibling in this example. So they're actually leading the life of that older sibling, basically the life of their older sibling instead of their own life, because they have stepped into the role of that first child, which they were not. They were the second child in this example. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's by giving a place, the client can then really fully own their rightful place in their system, which is the place of the second child in that system. Yeah.
So, in terms of loss, it sounds like either energetic loss or physical loss, people tend to kind of over own or energetically take the place of members, and then that kind of disperses their own energy or
Yeah.
they're able to be present in their own life.
Yeah, you could see it like that, definitely. And an extension, even more so, we carry so much that we're often completely subconscious of, and this can be depression, illness. It can really, in severe cases, go that far, to the extent that people, are suicidal, or even have taken their life, or have had a deadly accident, etc. Where we can really look at what happened there systemically. Where was this person drawn to in the system? Where did this person go? Or where is this person just bound energetically, like what you were just saying? And release them and really, really help them to regain a place in their life on their path.
So, would you say that if you look at things from an energetic level, we as souls or energies in human form, we have a certain vital life force energy, a certain amount of energy that is meant for us, for our physical functioning and emotional functioning and our ability to kind of live our soul's journey. And when we don't feel complete, we kind of lose pieces or fragments of our own energies to other things.
Yeah,
And
yeah, in
that's
a
what
way.
causes illness, or that's what leads to illness, because we don't have our all our energy serving
Mm.
us. It's like connected to other parts or fragments, whether deceased grandparents or moms that are still alive but are like energy vampires, or siblings that have always we felt competitive. And so our personal energy is kind of dispersed. We get sick and ill because we're not really having our energy for ourselves. And then this modality of family constellations restores that energy in us by kind of saying, by kind of I don't know how you would describe it, but like giving that your energy like a holding environment.
Yeah, but almost like redistributing the energy to the weight where it belongs. We're giving back any form of weight that we've been carrying to where the weight actually belongs in the system. And this can be grandparents' generations, can be great grandparents' generation, or maybe even beyond. We tend to work within maybe 3-4 generations. Sometimes it carries a little further, even if it's very, very heavy. But that really depends on the case. But we really give back that weight where it belongs to, really physically, like that family member. And the way we do this, I think we haven't spoken yet about how could that even look like in a traditional setting. We're gathering in a circle. We're in a group setting. And that means that for example, I would choose certain representatives for a person's system, for family members. And I would say, could you be this person's mother? Could you be this person's father, as an example? And would set them up in the center of the circle, which is our energy field that we're working with. And then I would let people feel themselves in, etc., and see what their gut reaction is, what their really movement, their inner movement is, that I tell them that they can follow.
I'm just going to interrupt you there because it might be
Yeah,
hard for people to understand. So
yeah,
you appoint people in the group to represent someone's mom or dad,
yeah.
and they feel in. Are you saying they're like taking on the character or becoming the actor and
That's a
representing them?
great question. So yeah, no, we don't do any form of acting. So it is it's not psychodrama. So we're not kind of reenacting something that might have been traumatic, a scenario or an event. We're really it's more about listening, really. So we're really, as the representative, I say, could you be this person's parent? The person feels themselves in. And what happens immediately very often is either an emotional reaction or a physical reaction. So they might feel all of a sudden very much drawn to the ground. They feel like very heavy all of a sudden. They might feel very emotional, very sad. They might start crying immediately. These are all very natural things that happen all the time when you start setting up the people. It's basically the way we can understand it maybe more clearly is it's a transfer of energy from the person's family system to another person who might be a total stranger. Yeah. So as we are setting up, I keep the issue in mind that the client brought in, of course, and through the feedback I'm actually getting from the representatives that are an extension, that have become now an extension of this person's family system, yeah, as the representatives in that moment. I can read what's happening in terms of the movement that is occurring in the space, and can then guide towards really healing movements and openings for them and for the client. And so what we then do is we can, in such scenarios, because we have actually representatives, is that we can give back the weight in the sense that we really say, I'll leave what's yours with you, for example, or I am your mother, you're my child, nothing more and nothing less, right? something like that, where they're very clear phrases that we use that are very short very often and very clear. And what we found is that they really speak directly to the soul on a deeper level. What I mean by soul is not in any form of, in a religious context, in any form or shape. I just mean the inner landscape, the interior of a person, and that's what we're working with.
So just to bring this down, I did a family constellation workshop with you. I remember I was a representative. I think I was somebody's grandfather. And immediately when you said you're the representative of the grandfather, I felt this surge of pain and guilt. And I just started crying because I had been representing that grandfather. And then I guess the grandfather, when they were alive, did not feel like an adequate husband. And then you had mentioned to me I think you made a scenario between me as the grandfather and the live grandmother who was alive. And then you said, so can you give me the example of the phrase you would use to me as a representative to put me in peace?
That in relation to the grandfather's wife, you said?
Yeah, like I was full of pain, and then I think you said something like, you don't have to be in pain anymore or something as such. And then I calm down or something.
Yeah, it's hard to take it out of context because these are always very much in the moment, the scenarios. But let's say that grandfather who can take in that maybe scenario, I can't remember the exact constellation, but let's say the grandfather's parents are in the space as well, and maybe what the grandfather has been carrying actually belongs to his father, let's say, and the father can then look at his son and say, this stays with me, I'll carry it. And you go live, you live your life. Yeah. I'll carry it.
Okay.
It stays with me. Yeah. And that releases, in this case, the grandfather, from the weight by hearing these very clear words that just land on a different level within us. And this is a form of really redistributing the weight to where it belongs, right? To its actual origin. And that's what releases the system. And I mean, of course, the client, that's what we're working with. Yeah.
A lot of people come in today's day and age with mental or physical complaints, either anxiety, depression, so negative thoughts, racing thoughts, or some discomforts in the body, physical pain, and things like that. So do you think that everything on a mental and physical level starts at a soul level?
I can't speak to everything. I can't fully speak to that. However, I would say anything that feels existential for a person, something where they really, they might have tried 5 different types of medication or 7 different types of herbs, or I don't know, whatever. I get like all kinds of clients with all kinds of backgrounds. And it's just nothing's working. Nothing's really reacting. Sometimes it gets a little better, but then it goes right back to where it was. To me, that's an indication that something is systemic. So I don't necessarily work with issues like, my neighbor's really annoying and I just can't. This is an example, like my neighbor has a dog and they wake me up every day and I just can't speak to this neighbor, and there's this conflict. There's maybe a conflict, but on a soul level, I'm more like I work with the soul and the interior. It is still on more of a top layer. I wouldn't say that that's a deep existential problem for the person. So I try to guide people into come in with a very clear issue, something that feels existential to you, something that's I just can't hold a relationship. It's just not working. I've tried everything and every time, and I keep attracting these and these kind of partners, and it's very destructive. Something like where you really feel maybe you already start seeing a pattern yourself. Yeah. Sometimes we're very much not aware of the patterns also, but in also a lot of cases we are. And then that's a good indication of something is other than you, right? And so that's where I come in as a systemic worker and can say, oh, okay, this is what's actually happening underneath all of that we might not even be in any form or shape aware of.
So how do people find you? Is it usually like they say, I know I have an existential systemic problem, I'm aware of it, I've done therapy, I've done meds, and it's gotten a little better, but not really, and then they call you up? Or how do people, is it a family member that generally refers?
That also happens, but it's very rare that somebody says, "I think I have a systemic issue." Like very few people, come to me. Only people who've probably already done a lot of that kind of work. But I have all kinds. I have sometimes people. I've had a person come in and say, "My house burned down last week." Like things like where you wouldn't maybe connect this directly to this work, but it is connected. And if something really, a big event also happens in a person, a traumatic event, that is very often, for me, an indication that something is systemically happening, and we can look at it that way. And what it really does is that it helps people just see things through a clear lens and have a clear image of what's actually happening. Because in German we say we take the soul image, so to speak, and put it in front of us, so we can see what's actually happening on the interior in front of us. And that's really what we're doing. We're working with the person's interior more so than anything. Yeah.
Do you think that someone has to be spiritual, or metaphysically oriented to do this type of work?
Not necessarily at all. I mean, definitely not spiritual, metaphysically oriented. Maybe curious about it. I don't know, but I would say, I have worked with Wall Street brokers. I mean, as an example, people who might, not saying that Wall Street brokers are not exposed to these kind of works, but maybe, or very mathematical oriented people, maybe, who are just, or science oriented people. Where they were just curious about it, and so they came in, but they were very skeptical about it. And it's so beautiful for me. That's actually, for me, it's very exciting, because what's beautiful is that the work always works. And so it's really, I see the change, and they walk out and they're like, wow, I had no idea this kind of stuff is even possible. And it's really not, it sounds maybe a little, I don't know, metaphysical in a way, and it is to a certain extent, I guess, but it's very practical work. It's very, very hands-on. I'm a very practical human, so I'm very here, like on this plane, and I work very much on this plane. However, what's beautiful about this work is that we can really, through a person, we have access actually to a lot of soul information. And once again, this just means interior information. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we do.
So what are some of the results? Sorry.
Yeah.
What are some of the results that you see?
I mean, really, I'm not even surprised anymore at this point. I've seen and heard really, I mean, you wouldn't believe sometimes what happens after constellation. It's sometimes ridiculous. I think I told you this example before, but I had people who they were like two siblings who haven't spoken for 20 years, and we do a constellation. The next day, the other sibling calls the client. I mean, things like, and this is not even one of the big wow cases. Like this is actually quite normal at this point. It's really remarkable, because, and I think the way I explain it, I don't think it's just magic, but the way I explain it, or to myself, I guess, is that because we're opening, we're actually making way for things to happen. We're actually refocusing the energy, and that's why there's all of a sudden space in some people's lives. All of a sudden, next week they meet a partner, and that will be the partner they will stay with for, I don't know, at least a while. I don't know, but it's really. Yeah, I see that. I see it all the time, that as soon as we refocus the energy and opening these paths, that all of a sudden there's space in people's lives, and they get healthier. If they were struggling with an illness, they might find a life partner. They might resolve an old family issue, and that's simply because we have kind of a little bit shaken the system and replaced it, almost like a bit of a those cubic dices things.
Rubik's Cube thing.
Yeah, cubes. So yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
So there's hope. It sounds like everybody is generally seeking, many people are seeking to live best lives, to remove their blocks, to achieve what they want to achieve, abundance, joy, pleasure. And I do think a lot of people struggle to find that solution or that way so they can feel better, so they can heal. So it sounds like this systemic approach and having representatives and bringing different people in from the family can get to real core issues, real root issues that otherwise wouldn't be addressed.
Yeah. And, I do want to say that that what we're really focusing, the main questions that we're focusing on is who doesn't have a place in our system, who was pushed out of our system. That could mean not talked about, Uncle so and so, let's not talk about him, something like that, right? Who was pushed out of our system, who doesn't have a place, and also who doesn't have their rightful place. And what that means is that somebody from the family system, it could be the client, has stepped into someone else's shoes from their system, an older sibling, the parent even, right? So once again, there's no space for anybody else to come into their lives. In some cases, a partnership, right? There's no space because they have stepped into the shoes of a parent. So who's next to them is the other parent, right? So we have to keep making space so that that movement can happen and that people can come into our lives as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Luisa. So how do people find you? It's going to be in the description as well of the video, but in general, how would people find you?
Yeah, I'm online at Family Constellations NYC, so familyconstellationsnyc.com. And all my information is there. That's the best way to find me. And they can reach out, they can sign up for my newsletter and be informed that way. And I'm also on social media at familyconstellations.nyc. And yeah, just reach out. I'm here.
Thank you so much, Luisa. That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Adina. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.